Story 1. A third grader, after learning a classmate had passed away, cried and said, "I never thought my heart could hurt this badly." Story 2. A doctor told me after hours of waiting, "I think you have leukemia. I'm not sure if you'll be able to keep the baby." I was not able to keep the pregnancy. We tried for 2 years. It has been 7 years, and I am still heartbroken. I had acute myeloid leukemia and needed to have a stem cell transplant. I also developed stage 4 kidney disease. I have decided not to have children. I refuse the possibility of passing either condition on. Some people have told me I am selfish. If I am selfish, so be it. Story 3. Nurse here. The worst thing I ever had to do was speak to the parents of a dying patient. I remember talking to an 80-year-old woman over the phone. I confirmed that her granddaughters had decided to stop treatment on her daughter, their mother, and she was dying. I knew the elderly mother lived out of town and told her she should make arrangements to visit within the next 12 to 24 hours. Her voice broke as she said, "What am I going to do? She's my baby." This still haunts me to this day. Story 4. It's gone to my bones. I'm a goner. My dad told me the aggressive cancer they found a few days earlier had spread too far, and that the amputation was only going to make him comfortable. Story 5. I used to be a camp counselor. On the last night of the week, we would ask campers to tell us one positive thing from the week, one negative thing, and one thing that made them hopeful. One week, 2 of my campers told us that they had never felt accepted for who they were by their families or peers. For the first time, they felt like they were able to be themselves without judgment. They also said it let them know that they could be themselves and it would be okay if some people didn't accept them because they knew there would always be others who would. I held it together in the moment, but I cried for almost half an hour after I got back to my tent. Story 6. How would you feel living with your aunt and uncle and your 2 cousins without me? My mom said this to me when I was 8 or 9 years old. It had no significance then. I told her I would hate it because she wouldn't be there. Mom proceeded to tell me when I was 13, while we were sharing deep things we had gone through with each other, that what she meant by that was she was planning on ending her life due to being in a really mentally abusive relationship with my ex-stepfather. Luckily and happily, she did not do it. Now I am 17. She is with someone who makes her a lot happier, and I have a little sister now. It's still the most heartbreaking thing I have heard, though. Story 7. You are feeling down? What about me? You have only lost your father. I have lost my husband 2 weeks after his death. I just said I was feeling pretty gloomy that day. I was not trying to make comparisons. I did not expect that to come back at me. Story 8. Well, I can't leave him at this stage in my life. I won't give up everything for something that happened in the past. I had just told my mother about how my stepfather had molested and raped me since I was 12. Story 9. There is nothing more we can do. We have tried so hard, but we could not save him. I am so sorry. My husband will have been gone for 9 years soon. The hospital and fire service worked hard for hours to save him. True heroes. Story 10. There was a moment in time I thought about trying again because maybe we did not try our best. But how could I look you in the eyes every morning and tell you that I love you while I do not? Story 11. You will never be as beautiful as you were meant to be. This was said by my boyfriend of 1 year, a day after I shared my childhood sexual trauma. I was 27 and expecting to marry this man. I am happily married now to a person with a soul, not to this tool. Story 12. Doctor, you have cancer. The opposite of heartbreaking was the doctor telling me I was cancer-free. Other heartbreaking moments were when we were told my dad had terminal cancer, when I was told my mother had cancer, and when my younger brother told me he had cancer. I lost my dad to cancer over 30 years ago. I lost my mom just under a year ago at the age of 90. Most likely it was cancer that killed her. My younger brother is now cancer-free. I hate cancer. I've lost several relatives to it. Story 13. During my parents' divorce, my mother argued in court that my father cannot change the life insurance policies since she recently changed them, removing me from the policy because she is estranged from me and there is no hope for repairing the relationship. She won. I do not care about the money, just that she would be so clear that there is zero chance of repair. Story 14. You think that I hit you? Here, let me show you what a real hit feels like. My ex, in the process of assaulting me 4 days ago. Story 15. We're so proud of you, but we're not coming back. That was the last thing my mother ever said to me. She was on speaker in the intensive care unit, lying next to my father. Both were on ventilators after the crash that happened while they were driving to my graduation. A nurse held the phone to her lips so I could catch every shaky word. I was outside the hall in my gown, hunting the crowd for their faces that would never turn up. My sister was still in surgery, so my mother spent her final breaths telling me to let her know the family loved her, no matter what. She whispered that I had to keep the house keys safe because the rescue crew cut their clothes off and our spare set was somewhere on the highway. The ventilator alarm chirped. The heart monitor spiked. Then she told me she could feel my father's hand and did not want to let go. The flat line that followed felt like it went on for hours. A nurse sobbed. I stood backstage while the dean mangled my surname, holding a useless program and listening to strangers clap. The voicemail is only 6 seconds long. I still cannot bring myself to delete it. Story 16. I do not care how many children get shot, my conservative brother said during an argument about gun control. We do not talk much anymore. Story 17. For me, it was not the words. It was the silence that followed my question. Have you heard any updates about my father? Still haunts me. Story 18. You need to leave. After coming out to my mother as transgender, we have made up since then, but I know I will never be able to trust her again. Story 19. When I was a teenager, my dad became suicidal one night after drinking. It was just the two of us. I was scared, but Dad always said not to call the police. So, I called the only person I could think of, his mother, my grandmother. I told her what was happening and how scared I was. Her exact words to me were, "Dear, your father is an adult, and if that's what he wants to do." I kind of forgot the rest because I was so shocked. My dad loved his mother. He put her on a pedestal. And she said this? I never told him about that call. He slept off the alcohol and depression that night. He lived long enough to accidentally kill himself with drugs and alcohol. As I write this now, it occurs to me it probably wasn't very accidental. Story 20. There's nothing left. I don't want you. Now you're acting like a child. When I called my ex after finding out he had ended the relationship because he cheated and was in love with a new woman after a few days, I called repeatedly trying to get him to talk to me. That was not my finest hour. I was just in shock, hoping he would tell me he was sorry or wrong or just anything else. Story 21. You are not even a woman. I am infertile, and men said this to me on the matrimonial site after I told them about it. Story 22. Toss up between you will never amount to anything, you are going to die alone, or maybe the fact my father knew he was dying and could not be bothered to reach out. Story 23. I am so afraid. My mother is struggling to breathe in her final days of lung cancer. Rest in peace, Mom. We love you. Story 24. After I was sad, the monster who gave birth to me said, "It was not rape. You are a person who got exactly what she wanted." Story 25. Our dear friend could no longer bear the heartache of life, said a message from a mutual friend who informed me about the suicide of someone I truly loved. Depression is not something one can overcome through love alone. Story 26. My dad used to tell me I was no longer his daughter. Anytime I committed a minor infraction, even though I was a good kid with straight A's, he would disown me in some way. After a while, I just grew numb to it, but I can't imagine telling my own children this. He disowned me so many times that I finally started confronting him about it, but it still stung. Story 27. I'm sorry, but I don't love you. My mom, when I was 7, the day before the first day of school. I was in a video and it's going to hurt you. I'm sorry, my soulmate. The more my body fails me, the more I accept my life, my best friend. But I keep going. Story 28. My mom was on the phone after my brother was born, talking about how happy she was to finally have a child who was not defective. For context, I have a birth defect in my feet that required around 30 surgeries. I was 11 years old when I heard that. Story 29. Take care of her for me. She will need you through all of this. It was my ex's best friend. I loved her so dearly too, and we lost her. I did what she asked of me for 3 years until my ex dumped me. I feel a bit guilty about our breakup, but there was nothing I could do. I just try to find comfort in the fact that I was there for her until she didn't want me anymore. Story 30. For my dad in hospital at 11 p.m. on a call. Kassler. I'm fed up with it. He had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and many other health issues. He was in hospital for a week for observation and was due to be discharged on Friday. They decided to keep him in for another night. After that call, he started going downhill fast. They asked him if he wanted to speak to anyone else in his family. He said no. He was ready. He died around 5:30 a.m. on Saturday. That was the last time I talked to him. Story 31. Me. He is dead. Isn't he? My sister, tearfully. Yes. This was about my lifelong best friend. I do not exactly remember why my sister broke the news to me, but I think she was the last person in a game of telephone I ended up talking to after getting some messages from my friend's brother and mutual friends. This was a guy I had known since the first grade, and we were in our 40s when he died. I had just seen him a few days earlier when he left my house after spending the whole day playing board games. It turned out that he took his own life. Story 32. When I was a teenager, the same girl told me 4 times, "I like you as a friend." After that, I have received worse news, but it does not affect me the same way. I feel terrible that my experience is so trivial compared to those others have shared. I am very grateful this was the worst I encountered, and I am sorry and empathetic toward those who have had far more traumatizing and serious experiences. Story 33. I can't believe I gave birth to such a worthless person. Or, I'm going to my parents' graves to apologize to them for what a disappointment you turned out to be. Both were said by my mother. Story 34. After my sister died, I had to tell my children. My 6-year-old was sobbing in my arms, saying, "I miss Auntie." Story 35. Things are not looking good here. The active dying process is beginning. The hospital doctor told me about my mother's condition and blood results. She had been sick for a long time. As her power of attorney and next of kin, I had to confirm with every nurse or doctor assigned to her that she had an advanced care directive and a do not resuscitate order. The second hardest and most heartbreaking moment was their question on the same day. "So we don't want any form of treatment, just comfort care and pain relief?" I had to respond, "Yes, don't try to save her." I had the power to overrule her wishes and try to prolong her life, but it was not what she wanted. We had talked only a couple of weeks earlier. She said she didn't want any more help with managing her disease. She couldn't do it anymore. She just wanted to die. She was 62 and I was 30. I miss her every day. Story 36. You're not even crying. Don't you care? My mom said this after my sibling died. It's like she forgot who raised me to hide my emotions and endure because it was easier. I did cry just when no one was there. Story 37. Your father's cancer is aggressive. Normally, patients have 4 to 6 months to live. However, in your father's case, do not count on the 4 months. Story 38. I have been feeding your child gluten for the past year because 3 excuses were given. My child has celiac disease. My father, their grandparent, knew how to follow the rules and provide appropriate food. I even offered to buy food if they needed help when the child spent the night with them. They said they were fine. Then my mother came in behind him saying that I misunderstood what he said. Yes, my mother defended him and made me feel like I was the one misunderstanding. Story 39. Who would you exonerate first? My parents. Who would you exonerate second? Myself. Who does that leave? That is how I found out my then husband killed my daughter. Story 40. I went through my ex-partner's phone after having suspicions that she was interested in someone else. These suspicions were confirmed along with a message to her brother that said, "Poor Terencila," while they had been discussing it. I then read messages confirming that she was going to her ex-husband's house and staying the night. It broke my heart. I gave everything. Story 41. I'm sorry, sir. Your mother passed away just now. That was a horrible phone call to receive at 1 a.m. The nurses were unbelievably kind. Story 42. Receiving he just died 10 minutes ago. From my crush. His father was battling cancer but passed away last year. Story 43. When I was young, around 8 or 9, my dad volunteered to be a parent helper on a school trip to the zoo. He was responsible for a small group of kids, including the goody two-shoes named Marianne. I can't remember what happened, but I distinctly remember my dad saying to me, "Why can't you be more like Marianne?" I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder last year in my late 30s. I feel like saying now, because I didn't know why I couldn't just listen and not get distracted. I didn't know why I was always late with my homework or why I always ran late, was messy, and unorganized. Why could I never live up to your expectations? Story 44. When my mother said she had forgiven herself for the sexual abuse I experienced as a child from a person she invited into the house and encouraged me to spend time with. Story 45. My dad passed away when I was 14, and a few years later my mom told me that wherever my dad is, he would be ashamed of me because he did not like sloppy-looking people like me. I gained a lot of weight after he died. It was my coping mechanism. I like to believe he would still be proud of the person I became despite my weight. Story 46. Daddy, just say you are sorry to mommy and maybe we can all be a sweet, happy family again. I just do not feel the love from you or anyone anymore. I am not your favorite child anymore since you left and now you have a new family. Utter heartbreak. Story 47. The doctor told my brother and me that my stepmother is dying. She was practically a mother to us. The same day, a few hours after she said her goodbyes, she passed away. My dad called my husband to tell me. It was the worst day of my life. Story 48. I recommend you get your fallopian tubes tied and do not have any more children after I was diagnosed with heart failure after having my first child. There is nothing else we can do, said the emergency medical technician who treated my mom when she went into cardiac arrest at 55. Story 49. Why did you do that? You got rid of your best feature, said my father to me when I was 12, after donating most of my hair to Locks of Love. This was followed by a story about how he dumped a girlfriend once because she cut her hair without his approval. Story 50. No one will ever choose you. You are the type of person someone will eventually settle for. I do not even remember who told me this, but it's stuck in my soul. I know my wife chose me, but this intrusive thought goes around and around sometimes. Story 51. This will not compare to some of the heartbreaking stories already shared, but both my parents hurt me deeply as a teenager when they divorced. My mother told me to grow up when she left. I was 14. A few years later, I chose to live with my father for 3 years and endured his second wife's abuse. I graduated from high school at 17 and moved out so my father and his second wife would not have a forced live-in babysitter. He told me not to call him again until I learned to behave. I eventually repaired my relationship with my mother. It took 17 more years for my father to call me and apologize for choosing his gold-digger second wife over his children. I also went to therapy to deal with this, but the words will always hurt my heart and soul. I know they were doing the best they could under the circumstances, and they know their best fell far short for me. Story 52. That's crazy. There is no scenario where I could have been happy or satisfied with someone like you. My girlfriend almost drowned and suffered memory loss as a result. Honestly, many things were heartbreaking because she did not remember me, but that one hurt a lot. Her family is wealthy, and I grew up in a lower-class household. She became spoiled. Story 53. Your grandmother is gone. We found pills and alcohol next to her. It looks like suicide. I was 16, alone. My mom's and my phones had been cut off, and my grandfather's brother had traveled 2 hours to my house to tell me the news. He then called my mom's boyfriend. She had just left for a trip with him and his 2 kids. We have never let our phones get cut off since then. I still miss my grandmother. She was the only one who genuinely loved and stood up for me. Life got worse after that, but the past few years have been pretty good. I wish she was here to see it. Story 54. My mother looked me in the eyes and told me she did not think I could do it. challenging me to prove her wrong when I shared my life dreams. Story 55. A popular guy in high school to teenage me, you should just honestly shut up. You know nobody likes you, right? Since then, now that I am in my 30s, I have had anxiety about people not actually liking me. That they are just being nice. Yes, I am in therapy. Story 56. It's all your fault. Our marriage difficulties are your fault. She sat on our bed and delivered the news. For me, our marriage was over. Story 57. As a small child, my mother told me many times that she was going to hurt my brain. Terrified me greatly. Story 58. Our friend died in a car crash. It happened 2 days ago, and we were informed last night. Still feels very raw. It is just so unfair. Story 59. My ex said I could keep the bed because she bought a king size as she wanted our children to be able to sleep next to us in it one day. Story 60. My father, after my mother died of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and I had to drop out of school to work. We were arguing because I worked 12 hours a day and he still wanted me to clean and pay the rent. My brother, who brought his girlfriend to live with us, didn't pay rent, so I didn't, and I pointed that out. At one point, he started calling me a whore and said, "Your mother died because of you. It's all your fault." My ex-boyfriend, who left me when my mother died, told me that my mother didn't deserve to have such a terrible daughter. So yeah, that's it. Story 61. XXXX killed himself. It was the first thing she said when I picked up the phone, her best friend. I feel like someone ripped the rug out from under her. I learned a lot about my sister that day because I didn't know it wasn't the first time for her. Not just suicide. I know one more. She knows too. But she was in Afghanistan too and also knew people who died from drug use. Afterward, she started drunkenly listing them, and I just cried. Felt like hours. She has held a lot of pain in her heart and lived through so much trauma and grief. She is probably one of the strongest people I know. We've all been through it, and I've seen some things, but I have dreams, and those words creep in sometimes. She calls me in random dreams. He does it all over. Story 62. I'm done with that chapter of my life. I had reached out to my stepfather, who was the closest thing I had ever had to a father and had been there since I was born, after 5 years of little to no contact because I called the police on him when I was 16 for domestic violence. Story 63. It is too difficult to invite you to places because you do not like social media. I had known them for 10 years. Story 64. Sometimes love isn't enough. Together 3 years, apart for 4. It still hurts because it was my fault it ended. Story 65. When I told my girlfriend that it was unfair of her to leave me like this, she replied that life is unfair. Story 66. I should have let you kill yourself. My sister shouted at me in front of her children. The children were so angry on my behalf that they did not even register in the moment how wrong that was of her. I felt so much love from those children rallying around me. I have forgiven her, but I have never forgotten that she is capable of such cruelty. Story 67. When my father found out I had a miscarriage, he told my sister she should have kept her legs closed. Story 68. The most painful words I have ever heard were not filled with anger or resentment. It was a quiet phrase that almost sounded like a compliment. You deserve more than I can give you. The irony is that I was not looking for more. I chose him. The pain is that he did not choose me in return. These words, spoken with apparent care, robbed me of everything I had hoped for, leaving only emptiness. Story 69. When I was applying to colleges, my working-class dad came into the computer room, sat down, and apologized to me through tears that he and my mom couldn't afford to send me to an excellent school like the University of California, Berkeley. He was a big, gruff man who scared everyone but was the kindest person. I sat there speechless and taken aback and told him it was okay. I hadn't even thought about it. I wasn't going to get into Berkeley anyway. But he loved me so much that he wanted the best for me no matter what. I only attended 1 year of state school, dropped out, moved home, worked full-time, and lived with my parents until I was 26. My dad died of cancer when I was 27, and if he had sent me to a prestigious school, I would have missed out on all those years with him. I miss him so much. Story 70. I was cyberbullied during high school. One day at home, I cannot remember the reason why, most likely I did something that my dad did not like. He turned to me and said, "No wonder no one at school wants to be your friend. I am 25 now, and we still maintain a normal relationship. However, I think I will never be able to forgive him for this." Story 71. The text screamed at me, "He is dead." I knew right away what my sister meant. My older brother died from alcohol poisoning. What really hit me hard was that he died alone on the floor of some cheap motel. It was absolutely anguishing. He deserved better. Story 72. My ex-boyfriend broke up with me and said he would never again find anyone who loves him as much as I do. Story 73. Every minute I spend with you, I could be enjoying being with someone else. She was toxic, abusive, and very mean. It was more painful than the day they told me I had cancer. Story 74. When the doctors told us our newborn son had severe brain damage and would not survive 2 days after birth. Story 75. A tie between, "You should get a girlfriend so we can all make fun of her," or your own parents saying, "I gave up job promotions for you." Story 76. No one ever wants to know you or just be your friend. People only talk to you or want you because they want to have sex with you. Story 77. Forgive him, I said when I just told my mother that my father molested me for years when I was a child. They have not lived together for years, but I finally told her. She cried, yet she still talks to him. Story 78. I am sorry, she did not make it. My cousin, who grew up like a sister to me, battled a chronic illness her entire life. She stopped breathing and needed resuscitation twice and was in the intensive care unit. 3 days later, we were told she was actively dying. Her parents left the room, and after going to get her parents and my family, I was returning when her doctor told me those words in the hallway. Story 79. When I was 6, my dad made my mom and him eat chocolate in front of me and gave me nothing because I did not offer to carry his bag to the house when he came back from work. They watched me cry silently. I ran to him laughing because he came home, and all he cared about was that I did not offer to carry his bag. I say offered because it was too heavy for me to carry anyway. Story 80. How would you feel if you got a new mother? My father said to me on my 12th birthday, 1 month after my mother had passed away. I was crying because it was the first of many birthdays without my mother. Story 81. My father, speaking about my mother as I was picking him up from cancer treatments, said, "I just wish she didn't make me feel like such a burden." Story 82. I told my ex when we broke up, "I wanted to spend my life with you." And they answered, "So did I." Those words cut me deeply because he was the only man I ever seriously wanted to marry. Story 83. Dad's dead, my sister said. He had been in the hospital for a few weeks but was released a couple of days earlier because he was better. He went Christmas shopping that day. He was happy. I didn't get to chat with him. We kept missing each other. He died in his recliner asleep. He had a good last day, but it hurt. Story 84. My ex-wife stumbled in, drunk or on drugs, saw her daughter sleeping on the couch, and asked, "Whose child is this?" Story 85. From my wife, "Forget you," and from my dad lying on his deathbed. "Here comes the light. Look out. Get out of that light," all while pointing to the wall just above my younger sister's head. Story 86. Your husband has cancer. I felt like my world flipped upside down and nothing would ever be the same again. Story 87. Father, you will never amount to anything in your life. Mother, after divorcing, you cannot live with me. You remind me too much of your father. Husband, after nearly 20 years of marriage, I do not trust you. Ex-best girlfriend at the time, I continue to question the strength of our friendship. Story 88. My identical twin sister has told me that she wishes she were an only child and that I ruined the family. Story 89. I love you, but I don't like you. My mom said this to me when I was 11 because I didn't believe her delusions. I watched her spiral into opiate addiction and lose her mind to the point that it affected my perception of taking prescription pain medication for my own joint condition, which I inherited from her. I hear people say this phrase surprisingly often while I am at work, even jokingly. and it hurts to hear it every time. Story 90. Your mother has a brain tumor and has 6 months to live. Your dog has a cancerous, inoperable tumor, and it burst. Story 91. My mom hinted that sometimes when she was carrying me, she considered ending the pregnancy. Somewhere in the multiverse, there are versions of her that went through with it. Story 92. Just look at him, said a girl during a teenage game of Truth or Dare when she had been dared by her sister to kiss me and was then asked why she was refusing. Story 93. My family is here. I do not want this do not resuscitate order now. These words were spoken by my sister, who had very little contact with the family for a couple of years because she was a crack addict. She was in the hospital for end-stage chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Story 94. When I reunited with my best friend, whom I had known for most of my life, she let slip that she had another best friend. I had been living in another country for 2 years, and we had not seen each other during that time. We had lived together during university and had been close like sisters. Her family knew me and I was always hanging out with them. Then it was over just like that. She was best friends with someone from her community, but not with me anymore. I tried to keep pretending, but at some point, I just disappeared from her life because it was too painful. I couldn't handle it. I never had a best friend after that, and I never let anyone be that close to me again. I share this because, to be honest, the worst news I was ever given was not told with words. It was my father's body language that made me understand that my mother had passed away after a short battle with very aggressive cancer. I was 9 years old. Story 95. I have grown to resent you. You are growing too fast. It has made me fall out of love with you. It has really destroyed a piece of my soul. Story 96. My boyfriend recently started working with me at my job and instantly connected with everyone. While I still feel alone and believe no one likes me, I try to be as social as I can and tell jokes. But they never land. I was venting about this, and he said something like, "You are just autistic. It's going to be that way forever, and it's not your fault or anyone else's." I already knew this, but hearing it from someone else still hurt deeply. Story 97. When my boyfriend of 7 years came home from an out-of-town job, I was so happy to see him. I went to kiss him, but he stopped me and said, "I can't. I really want us to be really good friends though. This is someone who would normally be all over me." Felt like my heart was being ripped out. Story 98. A cute boy asked me, "Why are you so ugly?" I was a dorky, lanky 13-year-old with giant glasses who was already feeling pretty awkward about herself. None of the many friends who witnessed it stepped up in my defense. Maybe it was not as harsh as what some people were told, but to a 13-year-old, it was pretty devastating to learn I was ugly. Newsflash. I grew out of that look. Story 99. It's Ken. Come over here, baby. My aunt called to tell me that my father had passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly, while I could hear my mother wailing in the background. Story 100. I just want to hold her again. My wife and I had been fostering our hospice cat, and she passed away a few months ago at 12 years old. She had many health issues, so it was not unexpected, but it still felt sudden. Skylar had been my cat since I first took her home as a long-term hospice foster before my wife and I started dating. When we moved in together, she quickly imprinted on my wife. They were a true pair. Skylar would follow her around the house like a puppy and sit in her lap while they watched sports on television. We always joked that I was the one who rescued her, but she still loved my wife the best. My wife was never really an animal person before she met me, and now she loves dogs and cats. Skylar was her first pet and her first pet loss. I miss our little kitty so much. I have lost pets and foster pets before, but I was not prepared for witnessing my wife's pain at this loss. I wish I could relieve her of that pain. Story 101. I did not know that a parent could hate their own child so much. My mother said this when I was around 12 years old. I did not do anything besides being an inconvenience, apparently. Story 102. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I was told it will never go away. I just have to learn to live with it. I still do not know how to feel. Story 103. The only reason you exist is that no pharmacies were open the night you were conceived. Thanks, Dad. Story 104. And mother did not have any money to buy another Coca-Cola. As a child, my mother was hospitalized for hepatitis. I expect the doctors expected her to die. My grandmother scraped together a few pennies and bought a Coca-Cola. Mom lapsed into a coma after only 1 or 2 sips. Mom's sisters, who were also children at the time, begged for the Coca-Cola. It had been on the kitchen counter for a couple of days, and Grandma finally gave them the warm, flat soda, which was a treat during the Depression. Later that day, Mom woke up and asked for the Coca-Cola. Story 105. You said I couldn't stay at your house anymore. This was in response to why my stepdad's funeral was held without me. My husband and I were on the verge of divorce because they would stay at our house for anywhere from 3 to 8 months. We said they could visit, but they would need to get a hotel room from now on. Mom and I don't talk anymore. Story 106. She has 3 to 4 months left. I'm so sorry. This is my first time experiencing any kind of terminal diagnosis. At the veterinarian after the groomers shaved my super fluffy kitty who was matted. She used to roll around a lot. They found an odd lump on her chest. We went to the veterinarian right after to get it checked. No tests were done beforehand, so it came out of nowhere. With one glance, I understood. Mammary cancer is a pretty clear-cut diagnosis. What hurt the most was that the veterinarian mentioned it repeatedly, trying to emphasize that my cat was going to die soon. Cherish what little time you have left, and similar remarks at least 5 or 6 times, not exaggerating. I understood that my cat was likely terminal. I wasn't in denial of the possibility, but can't someone just hope that somehow, magically, it was benign? A small hope. I'm sure the veterinarian just wanted me to be prepared and maybe avoid the denial phase of grieving. No matter what, I never dropped my guard the entire time she had left. It was 1 centimeter at diagnosis. I wish we had been able to remove the mass then, but only received financial help after it grew larger, just so she wouldn't get sepsis and die sooner. I had lost my other cat around the same time to renal failure at 17 years old, so my mother offered to help with the surgery expenses. This was so I would not have to deal with 2 losses while recovering from my own surgery at the time. All that stress would have affected my recovery. I don't know if removing it after finding it would have helped. Probably not. Usually, it has spread by the time you find it. But there is no point in dwelling on that. The past is the past. Jokes on that veterinarian, though. My fluffy girl lived another 1.5 years after that. Then it reached her lungs and we had to say goodbye. Depressing timing too. She passed the day before my birthday. It has been 4 years since then, a month ago. I miss her and my ginger boy, and I think of them all the time. They passed a few months apart, November 2020 and April 2021. The 2020s haven't been kind to me and still are not. But anyway, cancer is terrible. Also, if you have cats, spay and neuter them early on, especially the females. My girl was spayed late at 3 years old. Her previous owner abandoned her with us and did not provide funds for the spay as promised. Because of that, she left this world at 13 years old, almost 14. She was a trooper and stayed strong for so long, having really happy and extremely spoiled last months after the surgery. Mammary cancer is known to be very aggressive. Spaying before their first heat cycle lowers the chances of a cat getting it significantly, by more than 70%. Never again will I spay late. Learn from my experience so none of you ever have to go through it yourselves. Final note. It was 4 years ago as I thought I just had the years wrong. My bad. My sense of time is warped and everything blends together with a choppy memory. Story 107. Did the previous doctor keep you up to date with your father's condition? Yes, he said that my dad was stable. I am very sorry, but it is looking like he will not make it through the night. I miss you every day, Dad. Story 108. My dad, a few days before he died, said, I thought I had 5 more years. He had spent most of his life ignoring us, his children, thinking he could just put us off and be a player after my mother died and pick us up like toys when he felt like reconnecting. He thought he was giving us his rationale, but really he just told us he didn't care enough to take time for us when there was someone else to serve his desires. Story 109. I had just discovered text messages between my ex and a friend of hers. After confronting her, I asked directly, "Do you love him?" She responded, "Here's the thing," and my heart tore in half. Story 110. I wish you had died and the truck had lived. My father said after I barely survived dropping 50 feet and rolling 100 feet in a car accident. Story 111. I was told that my father had attempted to take his own life. He survived, thankfully, but I was young and it deeply affected me. Story 112. Sure, it's not like we actually dated. I honestly thought it was for fun. Me and this guy were friends for a long time. I caught feelings but didn't make a move because he liked one of my friends. After a while, he got rejected by her. So I comforted him and told him how I felt. I instantly felt guilty because he might have thought I took it as an opportunity to be with him. Fast forward a few weeks and he agreed to date me. Things were going well for a month until he stopped meeting me in general. He would act as if he didn't know me when he was with his friends, and we only ever texted. I asked him about it, and he said he didn't want his friends to know or that he had other things to do, so I respected his choice. This went on for about 9 or 10 months when my friend said I was stuck in something probably one-sided and needed to break up with him. So I tried. It took me 3 whole days because he ghosted me and refused to meet me. One day, I just walked over and told him I wanted to break up. Then he said, "Sure. It's not like we actually dated." I honestly thought it was for fun. That broke my heart so badly. He was the first guy I ever liked. I've never dated since then. Story 113. Really dodged a bullet with that one. My husband said to me after I returned from the obstetrician's office, having miscarried one twin but still pregnant with the other. Story 114. She passed away last night. It was Boxing Day morning. I was 8. I woke up and went downstairs to find my house full of people I didn't know. I was called to the basement where my biological sister and brother and all of my foster siblings were. My foster mom had died in her sleep that night. She was the kindest and most loving person. It was an issue with her diabetes. I'm still not over losing her so suddenly, especially because the woman who married my foster dad was my foster mom's best friend. I don't remember a transition period when my foster dad was single. Her best friend moved in immediately and made our lives a living hell, locking food in cupboards so we couldn't eat unless she said so, grounding us to our rooms and not allowing us to leave even to use the bathroom, and keeping all of the money child services gave them that was meant for us. We were supposed to be provided an allowance, but that never happened. Karma came for her. But as the years passed, my foster mom's passing still hurt more and more. Story 115. We cannot tell you for sure, but he might still be able to hear you, so you should say your goodbyes. Or for a different flavor of sadness. I only became your boyfriend so I could get into the group of friends. Story 116. It's stage 4 cancer. We don't know if he has 2 weeks or 2 months. The doctor told my mom and me that my dad was dying. We had less than 2 days. Story 117. It wasn't words, but when my daughter was in middle school, one day a classmate suddenly died on campus. Just like that. It was horrific. The whole school was numb. At the middle school graduation a few years later, the parents were there. Even now, I have no idea how they were able to be there. The pain from them was radiating like a solar flare. Story 118. When my mother called to tell me my grandmother was in palliative care and was not going to survive, I immediately called my father and begged him to let me take his and my stepmother's vehicle to go to the hospital to see my grandmother. She was in the hospital fighting lung cancer that had spread to her bones. I cried after I got off the phone with him. They drove me to the hospital the next day so I could spend time with her, and I stayed with her until the very end. I stayed home from school the following week to grieve her death. She passed away on Monday of that week, and to attend her wake and funeral. It was the hardest thing I have ever gone through. That was in 2018, and I still cry over her death to this day. I miss her so much. Not a day goes by that I do not think of her. She was an amazing woman and an amazing grandmother. Story 119. You were told you were infertile and would never be able to have children. 5 months later, I found out I was pregnant with my miracle baby and am now cuddling my 9-month-old daughter. Story 120. I will not be specific, But I was not believed when I tried to talk about genuine problems as an adolescent. Parents could not believe any child of theirs could have anxieties or health issues. They saw everything through rosy glasses. Story 121. I just don't want to grow old alone, he said when asked why he is even in a relationship with me. We had a big fight and breaking up was in the air. I was, and still am, desperately trying to keep the relationship going. I asked the question because he said he didn't love me, but still cares for me. We are still together, but it left a hole. When I talk about things that upset me, hoping for comfort or advice, he laughs at me and says, "Yeah, now I want to watch football." That seems to be the end of the conversation. Story 122. I don't want a partner, I want a wife, my ex said. I was with him for nearly 10 years, engaged for much of that time. It became very clear that the wife role is an interchangeable commodity intended to make his life easier and provide him children, which I had never wanted. The value of me as a person with interests, dreams, a career, and building an intentional, shared life together did not matter. Enabling him as the main character to have it all, a high-powered career, legacy through children, and never dealing with the mundane tasks of the home, is what he was looking for. Besides this, my high school boyfriend said, "You're just a shell of a person with no interests." That haunted me, and I began more intentionally cultivating an interesting life. Can't win. Doing me for real. Story 123. Well, what do you want me to do about it? After telling my mother at age 15 that I was being sexually abused nearly daily for over a year, my best friend found out and tried very hard to convince me to tell my mother so she could report him and help me. He was not reported, and I felt hopeless and unsupported. Story 124. None. Literally just 2 years of silence from being ghosted before I finally confronted my so-called best friend about it. The infuriating thing is they claimed we were still friends, but we have not spoken since then, and I am the only one who ever made an effort to actually reach out. They could not just tell me to my face what I was doing that they saw as problematic so I could maybe fix it. It was easier to just ghost, I guess. Now I am sad. It hurt me real bad, and I am still not over it even after several years. It was pretty traumatic for me. Story 125. I bring this up in these depressing threads and I feel bad, but these two things happened in October 2018 and March 2019. October 2018. Zachary died, my mom said tearfully. I was shocked and immediately broke down. I had a really good friend from 5th grade to my freshman year of high school. He hung himself the night before his birthday. I was one of the last people to probably see him alive. We had each other's Twitter accounts, and the day before he passed, he messaged me about bullies talking negatively about me. He was a very good friend, and it was one of the few times I remember my dad crying for me. It was the first loss I had experienced. The 2 classes I had group projects with him were full of tears, but nothing else happened. I really wanted to do those group projects with him. March 2019. Your dad passed away. I'm so sorry. It's not fair. My mom told me. Not crying but just numb. Part of me knew this was going to happen. It was one of the only times I prayed. My dad passed away from a very deadly and aggressive form of lymphoma that had spread across his entire body. He died 13 days after his initial diagnosis. He was taken to Stanford. I remember hearing he had cancer. I didn't want to lose him like I lost my friend the year before, but he was gone fast. He seemed healthy and cheerful until he wasn't. He was put on a ventilator and died of cardiac arrest. He couldn't breathe. I saw him struggle. Once he was on the ventilator, he was gone. This is still genuinely the worst emotional pain I have ever experienced. I felt horribly and painfully numb for the second time. I couldn't cry. I had to come to terms with my dad passing. It is truly the worst feeling ever. The only thing that at least keeps me somewhat above water is the fact that I guess he knew he was going to die and didn't care anymore. He gave up. These 2 incidents were both in my freshman year of high school. My grades fell, and I can guarantee you it was the start of depression for me. I was on my phone a lot. I didn't want to be at school. It was truly the worst and most unlucky moment of my life, and I look back at that year as emotional hell. As of now, my mom is married to another man who has been genuinely very good to me. My best friend's parents now run a charity to spread awareness about the anxiety he faced that eventually led to his suicide. As a side note, one of those bullies mentioned earlier, the only person who expressed condolences after I returned to school following my dad's passing, got off his skateboard to say that to me. I wish I could find him and tell him how much that meant to me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.